Good afternoon, Hadley. How are you?
I'm doing great today. How are you, Lindsay?
I'm good. I am very happy to have you on the pod. We met a few months ago at Solana Boston. Everybody, this is Hadley Stern. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at Marinade. We met at a Solana Boston conference actually back in, I feel like it was October.
hmm
Um, and thrilled to have him on. This is going to be episode 28 of the pod. So, Hadley, thank you so much. I would love to start with if you'd like to give a little intro about yourself and what you do at Marinade, and then we can get into the questions.
Sure, yeah. So I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Marinade. What that basically means is helping bring the fantastic staking product that's very unique in the Solana ecosystem to the commercial world, to primarily institutions in the US, globally, who want to get the highest reward they can from Solana staking with a great compliant and security solution and regulatory framework. So, day to day, we have a growth team that I manage and help sell that story and bring that product to market. Um, Marinade's a pretty small team, about 20 people. It's been in existence for about 3 years and kind of a nice crypto story because it started out at a Solana hackathon, obviously predating me. And one of the interesting ideas the team had at that point in Solana's history, there was a lot of concerns about centralization of the validators. So what's unique about Marinade and the original idea is that we don't run any validators ourselves. Instead, when you stake your Solana with us, we spread that stake to hundreds of validators in real time. And there's also a stake auction market mechanism where validators bid for that stake, which gives that's one of the reasons we have the highest rewards out there. So very innovative, interesting idea 3 years ago, with about depending on price, market price, about $2 billion of total value locked up, and now bringing that product to institutions.
Beautiful. And I would like to dip into the questions, but while we're on the subject, we can talk about this a bit if you don't mind. So first of all, I realized through research before our conversation that Marinade has their own token. And I don't stake through Marinade. I stake through Helios and Jito.
Mm.
But what are you guys doing differently? Is it the main like diversification through validators that is your true moat, I
Yeah.
guess?
So if you switch to us, you'd be getting higher rewards, almost 100% likely. So you can compare after. So you're not making as much.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really the primary. So Jito has something a little similar in that they also have a pool of validators. However, they don't have a stake auction market mechanism. And in Solana right now, validators are kind of making a killing, and they're doing that largely on fees, but they don't return to end stakers. So there's not really a mechanism to do that. So the unique thing that we have is this stake auction marketplace where every Solana epoch, approximately every 55 hours, um, the validators put up part of their fees and their MEV for the right to receive stake from Solana, and we pass that on to the end staker, you, and you get a higher reward. So that's the principal difference.
Very cool.
Another difference is that we also have a liquid staking token, MSOL, but we also have something called Marinade Native, which is targeted towards institutions, but also users who are maybe less risk averse, don't want to do anything in DeFi with a token, and like the fact that there's you retain withdrawal authority over your Solana should anything happen to the protocol.
Very interesting. Okay, cool. So there's the differentiation. Um, and what about your crypto origin story? I see that you were working in digital assets at BNY Mellon. How did you first get interested in crypto?
Yeah, it actually predates that. So I've been involved in the space full time since around 2014. I was
Wow.
part of the very early team at Fidelity Investments here in Boston. Um, and I was doing some other different things at Fidelity, and I was basically a corporate term voluntold to start the Bitcoin incubator. Abby Johnson, the president and CEO of Fidelity, really got Bitcoin very early on, and strategically wanted to understand what it was. And so I was asked to start Bitcoin incubator with a couple of other leaders at the company, we were part of that very early team. That was in 2014. I left in 2018. At that point, we had stood up Fidelity Mining, stood up Fidelity Charitable, accepting Bitcoin and donations. And then I was the founding president of Fidelity Digital Asset Services, which is the Fidelity's custodian. Left in 18 to join the startup world, did that for a bit, then came back to TradFi at Bank of New York Mellon, where I helped build their custody business for
Beautiful.
digital
Okay.
assets.
Really cool. Yeah. I didn't know that the CEO of Fidelity found Bitcoin early. That makes sense for all of their involvement because
Mm-hmm.
obviously we had a whole Fidelity conversation at Seoul Boston, and I see them quite involved. Um, that's very cool. And could you talk a little bit about transitioning from those TradFi companies, um, like BNY Mellon, Fidelity, to a company like Marinade or the other startup you were at, and what you kept from your habits and practices there,
Yeah.
maybe what you let go?
No, it's a very good question. I think about that quite a lot because they're very different modes of operating. I had been at Fidelity 18 years by the time I left. And at the time, it was about a probably 45,000 person company. It's probably, 60 or 70 now. I'm not sure. And then I went to a startup with 40 people. And, I remember during our first all hands meeting at the startup, the startup was smaller than the team that I was working with at Fidelity. So it was pretty funny. Um, I think, both large companies and small companies have their stresses and their ways of working. Personally, I find more positive energy from the startup world. I'd say in terms of things to forget going from big to small, or things that you don't have, is you don't have a lot of support teams around you who can really help. And so it's really about taking on a lot of initiative yourselves to get things done, and whether it's just little detailing things or little follow-up things. Fidelity had a fantastic large marketing team, legal team, events team. Startups don't have that kind of breadth. But then things to forget is larger organizations, by their very nature, especially TradFi organizations, are the risk is the first thing you think about, not the opportunity. And in the startup world, it's kind of flipped. It's not that you can ignore risk, but you're very focused on the opportunity.
That's a really, really cool answer. And I think about it a lot too because my first roles after college were more startup-y, and a lot of people and a lot of my friends work at companies like Fidelity because I'm based in Boston as well.
Mm,
And I think about a lot. I think a lot about the career progression and how important it is to work at a big company like that early on, if it is helpful for your processes. Um, I think it goes both ways because I'm very like risk tolerant, which a lot of my friends in other industries are not.
mm.
I don't
You're
know.
in a good industry then for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you specifically, what are you passionate about? What makes you wake up in the morning? What gets you excited?
Yeah. When it comes to crypto, I really love the principles of and the philosophy of decentralization, and the idea that these technology platforms can help take the place of centralized systems and make things better, faster, cheaper. One of the things I love about working in crypto is it's a very global organization geographically, and it's also a very global organization in terms of the type of people you work with. Obviously, there's a huge bias towards technology and cryptography, but there's also product, there's also marketing. So I think it's just a really great industry to work in if you like to work with a diversity of skills and a diversity of people. Um, and so I'm very passionate about educating people on how crypto works, what the opportunities are. I think there's economic opportunity, of course, but there's also opportunity to change some of the systems and the way that we actually run things to make, do things in a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like Marinade is moving in towards that. And I'm sure in your career, oh, did you have something you wanted to
No,
say?
no, no. I was just going to
Okay.
add, yeah, I think what I find interesting about Marinade and staking is that there is the economic component of the reward, but there's also the component that fundamentally I think staking is going to be part of the fabric of how our economic and other systems actually work in
Mhm.
terms of these validation engines. So right now, the primary way we validate transactions is with databases and tens of thousands of people that work in different places and confirm things, which is slow and expensive. Um, so what's really to me exciting about staking and proof of stake networks like Solana is yes, there's a nice reward and you can get that highest reward from Marinade. But there's also the fact that you're participating in this economic and validation engine as well. That's
Mhm.
really interesting in a way that you can't really do otherwise.
Yeah. And talking about this becoming more of a mainstream thing, and while you said, I think the first line you said was staking will become a something you said economical, a piece of our
Mm.
economical systems. Is that along the lines of what you
Yeah.
said? The first line.
Yeah.
And recently, I was getting my sister. I got her Phantom wallet. I hooked her up with some Soul, and I think I sent her Jito Soul, and
Mm.
because I wasn't holding too much of blank Sol, like just plain
Mm.
Solana. So I sent it, and she was like, "What is this? Why is this? What's Solana? What's Jito's Soul?" And I was like, "Well, Solana is like the city, and you people like the city, so they build in the city, and you have companies building on top of this thing because they like the rules." And I took that analogy from the Read Write Own book. If
Mm.
you've read it, have you read
Yeah.
that? Um, and then I tried to explain to her what staking was, and it was really hard for me. And because you're so deeply involved in it, how could you explain staking to somebody like my sister who is just learning what
Yeah.
Solana is? How do you get there? Do you think about this ever?
Oh, I think about it a lot. I think about it in
Yeah.
the context of my parents because
Yeah.
I've always been able to explain what I do in crypto until this job, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to go there because it's too weird.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit like a Russian doll marinade. There's like
Yes.
blockchain, Solana, staking, Marinade's way of doing it. I think to a TradFi person, or the way that I explain the economic piece of it, it's kind of like a dividend
Mhm.
in that if you buy Solana and if you buy MSOL, like if you buy Solana on its own, you're buying the stock. If
Mhm.
you buy MSOL or stake with Marinade Native, you're getting the stock plus a dividend. So that's kind of the
Great.
economic piece.
Mhm.
In terms of the technology and depending on but people now generally know about Bitcoin. So, the another analogy, even though it's not a clean analogy, is staking is kind of like mining, but for Solana.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's when you say staking, instead of buying a Bitcoin miner, you're buying into the machinery that someone else uses to validate transactions.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
That's the best
That's
I've come
super
up
helpful.
with. I think it's really hard.
Dividend, that's a great comparison because I'll take that to my dad when he
Hmm.
asks. I think my sister's a little bit too far out to understand that, but that's a
Yeah.
great thing to talk about with my dad. Um, okay, and then so over the years along the way, I'm sure you've been a hiring manager or hired somebody. What does it take to build a great team?
Uh, yeah, I was at Amazon for a period of my career, and I learned more about hiring there than I have anywhere else. I was actually, when I first joined the team in a leadership role, I was a little, for a moment, insulted that I wasn't allowed to interview anyone until I went through Amazon's training. And not only did I have to go through Amazon's training, I had to shadow 5 interviews and shadow the process before I was allowed to interview. So I learned more about hiring, and I don't think there's ever been anywhere as rigorous as a hiring process as there. Um, and the way that Amazon does it is very focused on their leadership principles, which I'm sure you've heard about. most companies have leadership principles or guidelines or whatever, and you pin them up in your cube or your office and you never look at them again. At Amazon, they're the operating system for the company. It's the way you're hired. It's the way you're managed. It's the way you're promoted, or the opposite. So I learned a lot from there. I also learned a lot just organically from my experience, hiring at Fidelity. I like to think about hiring decisions, and I also like to think about managing, and I like to think about the way that I work in terms of two elements, and that's the what and the how. Um, what someone is able to do and how they do it. And if you think about that way, you can have someone who's incredible at the what. They're the best product manager anywhere. They're incredibly amazing at technically at what they're able to do. But in terms of the how, they're a jerk. They don't work well with people. They cause drama wherever they go. You can have the opposite. You can have someone who's the most collaborative individual, listens to other people, is able to take feedback and distill it, but they're just not very good at the what. They're not good at they're not a good product manager. They're not technically astute, and that's not good either.
Yeah.
So you can sort of see where this is going, which is you want to optimize for both behaviors. I've seen no other better way to do it other than the Amazon interview process. I bring many pieces of that to how I make those decisions now in terms of growing a team, and in terms of interviewing.
My recruiter mind is very curious. What was the average number of interviews in the Amazon process?
So the other incredible thing about Amazon is that I forget the an acronym, but basically the way it works is you apply, and your first interview is a functional interview, usually with the manager. So let's say you applied for a junior product manager position, the hiring manager's head of product, you'd have a 1 hour interview with them. If that interview goes well, I think it's 3 days. Amazon commits always within 3 days to tell you yes or no.
Oh my
And
gosh.
if it goes well, you then go into something called the loop. The loop is typically with 4 to 5 people, um, usually 45 minutes to an hour each. In the loop, you will have always someone who is, I forget the term, they're basically an Amazon expert interviewer who is not on your team. And they've done over 100 interviews. And those interviews are not based on functional, they're based on the Amazon leadership principles and the STAR method. Um, Situation, task, action, result, I think is the. Then the team gets together after the loop and they do an hour debrief, always with extensive notes, and a hiring decision is made. And that commitment is within 5 days of the loop. Yeah, and they do that across the whole company. So it's like no one else has any excuse to say that they don't have enough time, or we're too big a company to move this quickly. It's a very structured process.
That's really, really cool. I don't know anything about the Amazon interview process, and I appreciate the timestamps on that. That's very cool.
And you're sort of managed and expected to that. It's very, very candidate friendly that way.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's unique in crypto just because the industry, most of the companies I'm working with, a lot of them will have maybe same size as Marinade teams, or just the entire company is made up of less than 50 people. And interview structures are really loose, and everything's just a lot looser in startup landia. But there's a lot to learn from, and I try and always encourage clients in the most respectful way you can to really hone in on their interview process, because it's really important. There's a lot of things that are important, but hiring is just a really cool thing that every single company experiences. So
yeah, I think the other thing that this is kind of a human piece, but it makes sense, is networks. Hiring people that you are referred to or that you've worked with previously is always an incredible
Yeah.
thing to do. Just kind of know what you're getting.
Yeah, because then you kind of get the, if they're the collaborative and if
Uh-huh.
they can do the job. And
Mhm.
so you
Yeah.
get both of those things immediately. Yeah, absolutely. Usually we come into the mix when they have exhausted that route and they
Yeah.
need outside resources.
Yeah.
So, and then as far as your day to day at Marinade, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So because most of the team is in Prague, uh, days usually almost always start at 8, sometimes 7, which is okay with me because they kind of go offline around 12 or 1, and then it's US calls and US meetings. Um, One of the things I really like about our CEO is he's very conscious of constantly thinking about why we're meeting. So not meeting for meeting's sake, which I think is another difference between startups and really big companies where you can just get kind of, down in meeting land. Um, so, days are quite diverse. There's also quite a bit of travel.
Mm,
So, that plays into it. But I think it's pretty typical startup, a mix of meetings, a mix of actual work, as I like to say, a little bit of Slack thrown in there, a lot of Telegram, which I think is very unique to the crypto industry, which I find fascinating. But
yes.
uh, email is kind of the last thing on that list.
Definitely. Do you like Telegram?
I do. I kind of wish. I remember early on, I was working with leadership at Block, and we were just like, if there were two things that crypto could solve, maybe the world would be a better place. One is time zones, getting rid of time zones,
Hmm.
and the other is unified messaging. Because some people are signal only, which I totally respect, and then there's a cohort that's WhatsApp, and then there's a big cohort that's Telegram, and then there's some people you end up texting. So it's like, uh, yeah, I think Telegram is good. I'm not a big fan of their security model. I don't really trust it, so I take it with a grain of salt. Um, but it's got a fast UI and it's responsive and it's where a lot of people are. So it's just a tool to use.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think of it? You use it a lot as well?
I do use it a ton. It's messy. I get
Yeah,
nervous about missing things,
yeah,
is my main issue with it. Um, I am not security should be more of a priority for me. It's not. But I
right,
think that I have heard those things and we definitely have our clients and candidates that like using Signal.
right.
I'm on WhatsApp too, email every once in a while. But yeah, main thing, my issue with Telegram is I'm afraid of missing something.
Yeah, there is someone on my team is a Telegram expert, showed me folders, which I've started to use. And there's also all unread, um, which is really helpful to have that there's an unread tab that you can turn on.
Oh, so you
And
can
one
keep.
habit I do is if I read something and I'm like, oh, I'll read that later,
Uh-huh.
I know that I won't. I always
Yeah.
tag it again as unread.
And just slip it in the folder. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love unreading emails and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I guess I should start doing the same. I need to use Telegram like I use my email, actually, is what needs to happen.
Folders are good. You can create folders.
Yeah, I need to do that then. I haven't done that.
You could have a candidate folder, I'm sure whatever your,
Active clients.
yeah.
I'm gonna implement that. You're lucky you have a Telegram expert on your team. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised in crypto, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
And maybe in as a part of the day to day, I you have deals going on. What does that look like for your role? Are you like writing up contracts with partnerships or writing up contracts for partnerships that you do with companies,
Yeah.
clients you bring on? How does that play out kind of
Yeah,
at
it's a
Marinade?
variety. So the first is distribution partners, we call them. So the custodians and exchanges.
Mhm.
So depending on who they are, later today I have a contract call to negotiate contract and language. Then we have some large asset managers who we also do custom deals with as well. And then a lot of client development sales calls, talking to clients about the product, what it is, how it works, how you can get the highest APY yield than anywhere else. So it really runs the gamut depending where we are in the life cycle of the client. And then, yes, partnership conversations. So whether it's with research organizations that we want to partner with, the the Blockworks, Masaris, Block Ones of the world. What are we going to do with them? So that's what makes it interesting. It's just a huge variety day to day.
Mm, love it. And how do you meet people? Do you like traveling to conferences, and are you just reaching out? I'm sure you have a huge network, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's all the expected ways. I mean, I think what's so funny about crypto, this very advanced technology, yet it's such a social human, we're human beings still until the AI agents take over. So yes,
Yeah.
in-person relationships are key. Uh, Meeting people and talking to them without selling and being genuinely interested and curious, which I just happen to be, is key. And then, but also knowing when you don't need to do that,
Mm,
when you can leverage some of that social uh, energy that you've had from already meeting in person and just do business,
mm,
remotely, which also the crypto industry excels at. We're all over the place. We're global. Teams are global. We speak the common crypto language, but we're able to do things remotely.
yeah.
And Telegram's kind of amazing too. I mean, I'm amazed at, once you get into crypto and go away from TradFi, you know, negotiations can happen in Telegram, documents are
Yeah.
shared, sort of the whole thing can be done in Telegram.
It's amazing.
Uh,
And I appreciate sometimes how casual Telegram is. I think there's a give and a take
yeah,
with the I don't think it's lack of professionalism. I just think it's a different culture in crypto. And it is nice to not have to have like the standard procedures that seem to go on in the rest of the world where
yeah,
things take much longer to say yes, and you can just text and negotiate instead of
yeah,
email, which will
yeah,
automatically add a lot of time.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and what are your conference plans for this year? Are you going to a bunch?
Yeah. I mean, I think likely consensus in Toronto.
Great.
We're focused a lot on the family office market, so that's not a broadly known market, but doing a lot of activities there. We'll be doing stuff with Digital Asset Summit through Blockworks in New York and London, um, probably Dubai. So, the kind of list goes on and on. We're dividing and conquering as a team in terms of which ones we focus on.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, conference. Yeah. Do you have a favorite conference?
Uh, I mean, I think consensus on or in the early days was great. I think it's
Yeah.
kind of it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Toronto with that, and what's happened with the sale and the organization. Um, I like the more global ones. Singapore Token 2049 last year was amazing. It was great for me because it was also my first Solana breakpoint, so I got to really know the ecosystem there, and they did something really interesting there, which is instead of having um, moderated panels after moderated panels, they did debates. And so they put up, and some of the debates were pretty, you know, uh, pretty aggressive, like, the meme coin phenomenon is a waste of time, yes or no, kind of thing.
Right. Wow.
So I really liked that from a content standpoint. But my favorite conferences are where there's a good cross section of people I know, but people I don't know that I can just meet and learn from. Um, so yeah, no real bias either way.
Yeah.
Denver's
Yeah.
always fun, kind of crazy. What about you? Do you have any favorites?
No, I heard I didn't get to go to Breakpoint last year. I heard it was amazing from a lot
Yeah,
of people. I like the different structure. Some of my team members are going to be going to ETH Denver this year.
yeah,
So that's great. I was supposed to go to Consensus in Hong Kong actually, and
yeah,
then I kind of backed out of it because my team talked about it a lot. I haven't been to an extensive amount of conferences because I kind of joined like a year and a half ago, and
mm.
but this year I plan on going to a few more.
Yeah. If you ever want advice outside of this podcast on what to attend, I'm happy to. I think there are some that are better than others. And partly it's not just the location; it's the Like ETH Denver is very very decentralized, which you would expect, with a lot of It's almost like a place where people would go to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Versus I think Breakpoint was certainly for Solana, there's nothing. That one's in Abu Dhabi at the end of the year. There's nothing better than that.
I have to decide if I want to go to Abu Dhabi. I'm assuming you would be going, even though I don't like assuming
Yeah,
things. Yeah, you'll be
yeah.
there.
There,
Um,
I mean, there's a lot going on in Dubai, so um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and in UAE.
It's great for crypto. I don't know if you know. Do you know Kevin McCoy? He's active in the Solana ecosystem. Have you heard of him?
I don't think so.
He just started like a crypto media company. He came from the Solana Foundation last year. I think he left, and yeah, he said that Breakpoint was his favorite, and that he thinks that Dubai and UAE have the best crypto communities in the
Hmm.
space. They just really they get what community means,
Yeah,
and I agree. It seems
yeah,
I've never been, but it seems very good.
yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, how was institutional sentiment with Solana? What's that? I really don't know anything about
Yeah, I'd say
how.
it's pretty strong.
Yeah?
I think there's two ways that they can come across it. One is on the investment side, so and certainly on the validator side, and that's why we have a lot of clients there, and we'll have more. There's a lot of energy to stake. You get such great yield with Solana, and particularly with Marinade. So there's a lot of interest on the yield side. And then on the tech side, there's a lot more interest. You saw Societe Generale announced last year a couple of things they're doing with the actual Solana technology, Van Eck. Yeah, strong interest in Solana. It's kind of emerging as the blockchain where you can actually build.
Because that's what it seems like, but I feel a little blinded by
Mm.
crypto Twitter and my algorithm. And I
Yeah,
obviously, of course, saw the filings for the ETF, and but it's I would just rather ask you straight up because that's
yeah.
exactly your bread and butter. So what about, I don't know if people ask you this a lot. I'm sure they do, but what about your predictions for 2025? Ideas of what's going to happen in the market?
Well, I think everyone's waiting 20th, and so then it's a question of I think 2025 is going to be the year of regulatory clarity. Now, hopefully, it's positive clarity. No one really knows, but all signs are there. So, to me, this is the year for the U.S. Full stop. It's the year for the U.S. to gain that clarity, to gain that partnership with the regulators, and to really bring back American leadership in the crypto space because so many companies and so many projects moved offshore.
Mhm.
That to me is the biggest thing I'm keeping an eye on in 25.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. And what about Marinade's specific goals for 2025? What are you guys hoping to achieve?
Continue to penetrate the institutional market, particularly in the US. Continue to run the stake auction marketplace and provide the highest yield that anyone can get on Solana staking. Continue to help decentralize the Solana network. So the other benefit of staking with us is you are organically supporting Solana because you're not staking with just one provider, you're staking with hundreds of validators. So it's kind of like being in a mining pool in Bitcoin instead of solo mining. Continuing to evolve our technology and product, working very closely with the foundation on how we can continue to support validation on the Solana network.
Yeah, beautiful. How is it being in the Solana ecosystem? I hear rave things.
I love it so far. I mean, I've only been in it full time 7 months.
Mhm.
We were meeting with a partner in at Ashley Breakpoint, and they're a company that's involved in many different protocols. And they were like, "This Solana thing is so refreshing. Everyone's very direct, everyone's very business-like, but also very helpful, and it's just very professional." So it's actually kind of a natural fit from TradFi, where, but it's just faster. It's just very execution-oriented
Sure.
mindset.
Yeah,
So building, delivering, creating.
absolutely. Yeah, I like that too because Solana does have that type of like refreshing professionalism
Mm-hmm.
um, that some other blockchains don't have.
Yeah.
Um, if you were, let's say you were at Solana Breakpoint giving a speech about Marinade, maybe starting a debate about something, what would you want people to take away from that conversation um, about Marinade and maybe what you guys are bringing to the table and who ideally would be listening?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I messed it.
Sorry, yeah, yeah. If you're giving a speech or initiating a debate at, let's say, Solana
Yeah.
Breakpoint about Marinade, and what you guys bring to the table, what do you want people to have like a one sentence takeaway of Marinade? And who is your audience that you would be speaking to ideally?
Yeah, I think there would be two audience. There would be the end person who's looking to stake,
Mhm.
and then there's the ecosystem, the ecosystem itself of Solana. And I think it's I'm probably going to sound like a broken record here. It's highest APY, highest reward, and then supporting the decentralization of the network. So
Mhm.
uh, because we are a place where validators who need to get stake, we provide that stake to them, and so we just organically support decentralization of the network.
Yep, beautiful. I think it's sometimes good to be a broken record in crypto with so much noise. It helps I don't know, helps everybody
Yeah,
really know what
yeah,
you're doing.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
Um, yeah, no, I think 2025 is going to be an exciting year.
I would agree with that. Um, that's all of the regular questions I have for you, Hadley. I have two more that I ask all of my guests. Um, but thank you for educating on
Of
Marinade
course.
and highest APY and decentralizing the ecosystem.
Yeah,
It's I think you have converted me to be a Marinade user, which
great.
I
Yeah,
was
we'd
not
love
before.
come over and try. If you have any questions, let me know. But it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So first question, what is your favorite book?
Uh, I guess there's in the business world, in the personal world, I really love the book The Four Agreements.
Hmm,
Um, by I'm trying to remember the name. I should remember it. But it's actually a book that Tom Brady talks quite a bit about. But
really?
it's a book by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it's a favorite book.
Very cool. I've never heard of it. And I like that Tom Brady talks about it. Obviously, us all being from
Sorry, go ahead.
no worries at all. Um, and then my other question is, how do you become a good decision maker?
How do you become a good decision maker? That's another interesting one. Uh, I'm going to quote Jeff Bezos at Amazon again because I learned a lot from what he says about this, and you couldn't look it up. But he said there's two types of decisions. There are one-way doors and two-way doors. And the mistake that we often make in life is we think every decision is a one-way door, meaning you walk through that door and you're not coming back. And when in fact most decisions are two-way doors. So I think becoming a better decision maker is recognizing when a decision is a two-way door and not freaking out about as much about it.
I've heard his philosophy on this. I think you put it in a really good, straightforward way.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him?
No, no,
No.
never. Yeah.
He did. He never really like popped in to things.
Well, at that time it was COVID, so it was a
Oh,
lot of remote time.
sure.
Um, but no, but I felt like I met him because you're sort of inculcated into that way of thinking and the leadership. If you Google the leadership principles after this,
Mhm.
and just imagine this was the way a company is run for real, that's Amazon.
That's cool. That is really, really cool. And it's
Very
amazing that they
proud.
could do it at that scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Hadley, thank you for your time today. It was such a pleasure chatting.
Awesome. It
Um,
was great to follow up. Sorry it took a little longer, but thank you very much.
no, the timing worked out perfectly. Excited to get you up on here. We've got your pod. It will be on Twitter, LinkedIn, on chain through a new company called Pods Media, um, YouTube, and Spotify. So we'll have it all over the place. You can share with your people.
Great. Let me know when it's live. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Hadley. All right, bye.